What are 9 things that I need to do or understand in order to get hired as a mutual fund analyst? Well, first of all, you have to understand that there is a formal recruiting process. Where is it? Well, these firms have very big and elaborate human resources departments, especially the large firms like the Fidelities of the world. And so you want to contact HR and find out if they're hiring, okay? Just find out if there's a position open. Secondly, you want to network like crazy. You want to get to know people that work at that company. And the way you do that is you use LinkedIn, do an advanced search, and search on that company name and find out if you know anyone there or if people you know someone there, meaning second degree connections, and ask for an introduction and sit down and do a bunch of informational meetings and then cite or mention those meetings in your interviews that you know this person and sat down with them, right? It makes you look good, makes you look resourceful and proactive. Okay, 3, be prepared to pitch a couple of long ideas, obviously. And I gave you a template on this in the mutual fund section here in this course. And so it's pretty simple. You just fill out this template, okay? You talk about valuation fundamentals, the risks, the management team, the competition, etc. Just fill this entire template out and just be ready to pull them out. And make sure that you don't cover technicals in this. And if it's a value investor, talk about cheap stocks. If it's a growth investor, vice versa. Okay, cool. Next up, we have know what stocks the mutual fund owns. How do you do this? Well, like I mentioned in the hedge fund section, it's pretty easy. You go to sec.gov or whatever government website in the country you're in mandates that companies register the positions at. And in sec.gov, do a search on the company name you're interviewing with and open up the filings. And you can see all of their positions that they've filed within the past 3 months. And they have to do it 4 times a year. It's a quarterly thing. And it makes you look good if you understand what they own already, because they might ask you about those companies anyway. Now, remember the OHare test. What is that? Well, as we mentioned before, this is a personality test. If you're stranded at a big airport like OHare with your portfolio manager for hours and hours and hours in between flights, do you like their personality? You know, they're your friends, whatever, do you get along with them, right? So it's very important. Remember, relationships are always more important than product knowledge in business. Unfortunately, it's whom you know, not what you know. Okay, now if you're interviewing with a value investment firm, you have to read this book first and mention it in your interviews, okay? So Benjamin Graham, who is the godfather of the value investing industry, he wrote this awesome book years ago called The Intelligent Investor. And Benjamin Graham was a professor at Columbia University. And Warren Buffett went to Columbia because of Benjamin Graham and studied under him. In fact, I remember I met Warren Buffett and he said that he brought this book with him on his honeymoon once. Whatever, it's pretty funny. Good guy. But read that book before you go into an interview with a value investment firm. And please make sure that you mention this in the interview, okay? Okay, next up, if it's a GARP or a growth firm, you have to read another book. GARP means growth at a reasonable price. Basically, if it's not a value investor, if it's a growth investor, just read this book here. And this is written by a brilliant man named Peter Lynch, who was the top portfolio manager at Fidelity for years. And it's called One Up on Wall Street. And I love this book and his investment philosophy because he uses common sense. You know, he writes there on the cover how to use what you know to make money in the market. A lot of it is common sense. Please read it. I think you'll love it. Okay, and what you also need to do is, again, bring 1-page write-ups on all of that company's 5 or 10 top long positions, okay? Now, earlier, I told you to create a couple of pitches on companies you like, but I also want you to do write-ups on the top 5 or 10 positions of that firm, okay? I know it's a lot of work, but no one else will do it, and it's competitive, and I want you to get the job. And so you're going to keep those 5 or 10 long position write-ups in your bag, okay? And when they ask you about what your thoughts are on one of their top 10 holdings, and they almost always do, if you pull out this write-up and keep multiple copies in your bag in case you meet with multiple people that day in the interview process, if you pull out this write-up, you will look amazing. Nobody does it, but you will, and that's why you'll get hired. Okay, and then follow up, of course. Write a thank you note, but what you also want to do is connect with them immediately on LinkedIn. After every meeting in your life, actually, you need to connect with that person on LinkedIn because unfortunately, people will judge you when they do background checks on you on LinkedIn based on how many people you know and if you know the right people, that sort of thing. Okay, and then send a thank you email as well, and send that thank you email right away. And I say that because I remember when I used to interview people, I would always, I'd always kind of feel better about them if they sent me a thank you email, because at the end of the day, I had to submit the paperwork to human resources on what I thought of that candidate. If they sent a thank you email, then I don't know, it kind of influenced me a little bit to maybe be a bit more positive. Sometimes, not always. And then a couple days later, if I got a thank you note, which is rare these days, nobody does it, but it's a beautiful personal touch. And if you get a personal note from somebody just thanking you for their time, whatever, I've sometimes forwarded that on to human resources. You really want to stand out, that sort of thing. And don't be intimidated when you're in these meetings, okay? If somebody asks you what's your best idea, and then you start talking about it, and then they interrupt right away and say, what's your second best idea? And you start pitching it, and then they interrupt you again and say, what's your third best idea? Don't worry. It's an intimidation interview tactic that a lot of firms do. But just be thick-skinned and enjoy the meeting. Enjoy the meeting. Have fun with it.